What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about Death Stranding 2, go into some spoilers, talk about that ending, and talk about some of just the big twists that this game had. Just more my opinion. You know, we did the ending explained, less technical this time around, more like pure emotion, I guess is what we're going to do. So, honestly, look, the last couple hours in this game, I think, are incredible. You know, I even said that in the review. I think, in a large part, you know, again, the story is carried by characters for most of it. The story, in my opinion, is not even all that amazing, but the last couple hours really help it along. In terms of, I don't just want to talk about the ending, though, a couple other twists and kind of big moments, you know, throughout the game. I want to talk quickly about Dead Man. You know, this was something that I think added that emotional punch in the first couple hours. And I'll be honest, okay? Played, obviously, the whole thing, experienced the whole thing through my brain. My emotions with Dead Man were actually higher than anything else that happened in this game. Now, I'll explain my logic because I saw a lot of things coming, and we'll kind of go into that in a second. With Dead Man, I thought it was just honestly so beautiful, and I loved what they did there. I get the sense that, like, I mean, I think Sam loves Dead Man more than Sam loves any of the other characters, except for Lou. Lou doesn't count, all right? But besides that, like, even, you know, the connection with Fragile is super good, and I love that, and I honestly wish we actually saw more of those two just having back and forth, and we did a couple times, but I would just like more. But him and Dead Man is honestly just something special, you know, him running up to give him a hug, and then he's a hologram is like, even that was like, you know, that's so sweet, you know, that really touched me, honestly. I thought Dead Man was one of the best characters by miles in the first game. I really believe that. So, you know, I really feel like they kind of just wrote that stuff in, and that's okay. You know, he's a guy who experiments. He's a guy that's always researching. It's not impossible to believe that he would find a way to, like, basically make things work, you know. And as soon as he said, like, you know, his organs and stuff, like, they're dying and like he's on the way out, it's like, all right, so he probably isn't actually alive anymore. He found a beach or whatever, and then they tell you, okay, he found a beach. But that was honestly very emotional, you know, when Sam touches, you know, the glass or whatever, the projector, is like, man, like, I felt that. And I truly, that wrap up, because I thought that was it. I mean, and to be honest with you, I actually, like, I like that they brought him back a couple other times in the game, right? So he's like the samurai, he takes control of Hartman sometimes, and like, it was cool just to hear him again. And I mean, he kind of acted almost as like a mama type force where, well, just because he's gone doesn't mean you can't still do stuff with him. He can still be beneficial and helpful in the beach or on the beach, right? He can still do stuff there, which is, you know, they already did that with Mama, so it's not shocking. It's not breaking any rules or anything, but I really saw that as a conclusion. So, to be honest, like, I don't know if I really needed him to be in any other parts of the game. It was always cool seeing him, like, physically or hearing his voice. He just has that welcoming kind of persona to him that I just love, and I think that's kind of why it works, is he's just this, like, helpful mentor type figure that is so great. So hearing it and seeing it are awesome, but then, you know, to have that conclusion in the beginning was really cool. And then, you know, another, because I'm trying to think, like, what didn't I talk about in the ending explained and in my review? You know, every Higgs scene, as I've said before, like, every Higgs scene is so freaking fantastic. I mean, you have his first appearance, which is pretty cool, a little subdued, like he's wacky and he's awesome and he's back, but he doesn't even show his face, right, the first time. Second time is, I believe, the samurai fight, so that was just awesome. I mean, that took things to a whole nother level. I think that's going to be in contention for, like, one of the coolest scenes in a game this year, at least to me, like, when I do my Game of the Year awards at the end of the year. It was just flashy, you know. It was it didn't add any, like, story substance in that moment, but it was just fun to look at, and you need that kind of stuff, you know, for a game like this every now and then. So that was freaking awesome. When he's in the indefinite loop and he's burning Sam alive, and then he has the fight with that actually might be better. I mean, the samurai fight's so good, a little swordsmanship thing going on, even though he's using a guitar, so that was awesome. But, like, you know, when he finally gets the upper hand, because, you know, for the most part, like, he always lets Sam walk, right? He's always like, well, I'll make a BT and you'll have to fight that. I'm just going to run away. This time he's like, no, I'm going to light you on fire and you're going to literally be in this agony forever. And they didn't get Sam out of that situation very quickly, right? He was in that situation for a long time that I thought was excruciatingly painful. And it was actually kind of hard to watch, because it's like you want him to almost, like, I guess, power through it and just stand up and stop the fire. But it's like, well, that's not going to happen, right? So, I mean, that was epic. And then him battling tomorrow and kind of having this back and forth of him being slightly, having the upper hand, but then having her just freaking take him out pretty easily was awesome. I mean, anytime Tomorrow had fight scenes in the first place was awesome, but specifically Higgs versus Tomorrow. So those are, I mean, to be honest with you, like, I liked the kind of Avengers like recruiting thing that Fragile did. So like the connection with Rainey and doing that whole, like, that was awesome. I think Rainey, I don't think they really used her all that much, to be honest with you, but that scene when she recruits her and you kind of see, I mean, you see everybody's backstory, right? You can see how Dollman becomes Dollman, which was awesome. I really, really love that. Tarman, as I said in my review, I didn't really like him all that much. He had moments, and his big moment was the fishing situation that happened, right, with the whale and his son. That was awesome. I mean, if they did more stuff like that with Tarman, that would have definitely helped, but that was a great, great scene. But Rainey might have been the best one. It's a character being, like, thrown out of her town, right, by its own people forcefully, like, not very nicely, and the kind of sadness that brings, and, obviously she's pregnant, and just kind of, again, being like this outcast where they don't really understand, like, it's definitely thematic, right, where it's like, she can control rain, and that can be seen, I can understand it, that can be seen very, very negatively in this world, but they don't really give her a chance, right? It's, well, actually, she controls the rain in all the best ways. Like, she's kind of a cheat code for a game like this, or a world like this, so you kind of want her on your side. Her and Tomorrow kind of, like, Fragile doesn't even have the jump powers anymore because of jump shock, so it's like, really, Rainey and Tomorrow are easily, like, Sam is capable, but they have the two best powers. Sam not being able to die is something you would probably like to have, but it can be a blessing and a curse. But those two, I mean, Tomorrow's kind of invincible, and then Rainey can literally, like I said, I mean, rain is one of the most powerful things in this entire, world universe, and she can control it, and it really does, like, the opposite effects when she wants it to, right? She healed Fragile and all that stuff. So that was a great scene. And then beyond that, we really do get to the ending. So I guess to kind of just explore that a little and tell you guys how I felt. When it came to that stuff, I mean, I had predicted weeks before, and I'm really glad, I'm glad I beat Death Stranding, the first game, because I did that, 3-4 weeks before Death Stranding 2 came out. And my wife and I, we went hard. We went hard into all the trailers. We were analyzing it bit by bit. We had a lot of fun. I mean, it just seemed to me so obvious that Tomorrow was Lou. So that was, I felt vindicated. That was really great that they did that. And I mean, I don't know, the feeling that I had just felt like, yes, I was freaking right. It worked. It also worked. I don't want to just make it all about me. It worked in the context of the story. I think the thing there is I really love the Lou and Sam moments, and they're just, obviously there weren't a lot of them, and that was kind of the point, right? A lot of their relationship was technically built in the first game, okay? The fact that you made this journey with Lou, and she was your partner, she was somebody that was just with you when you did all of that stuff. That helped the bond. And then, there was, 11 months in between 1 and 2. So obviously you got to grow up a little bit, and it's actually why I thought when Sam goes back to his shelter to get the picture, I actually felt pretty emotional in that moment too, because it's he's seeing when she's putting her handprint on the chart, her size. I thought that was awesome. It just felt very sad. It felt very depressing because it's I believe it, and I think they sold it really well that Sam loved her to death, and that was a great relationship that wasn't obviously given too much time and obviously purposely, but that Tomorrow thing, saw it coming, loved it. When she says I'm your Louise, and they embrace each other at the very end, that was freaking awesome. And I will say, I said this in every other video I've made the last 2 days, again, the story I think was actually quite weak. There really wasn't much of one, right? It's okay, well, who killed Lou, and then also, did Lou even die? And the answer, I think, as soon as you meet Tomorrow, is no. She's right there. Obviously, again, that aging thing, and that's depressing too. Sam loses all of those years with Lou. He loses all of them. But again, it kind of takes a little bit of okay, well, what happened to Lou? It puts that on the back burner because it's not that big of a deal anymore. I think because I knew that Tomorrow was Lou. The Fragile thing was definitely shocking. That was one that, even again, in the trailers, and I think I probably made videos, but I didn't specifically talk about Fragile. those were things that I couldn't piece together. And as the game was going, so like my wife read this, and she read the whole thing like day 1 or 2. And I said, oh, why would you spoil it for yourself? And I was like, well, I'm going to keep playing it. And as I kept playing it, I told her out loud what I think was happening. And she told me like I was really close. And I was like, well, I'm just waiting for like the 1 or 2 things that connects it all. You know, what connects Neil, like what specifically happened with Fragile and Lou, because that was something I could just never piece together. So, and I think they did it well. Like I wanted to stress that in my review. Like I think those last couple hours, they added so much to the story that really wasn't all that there, right? It's just connecting Australia. And then even like the president of APAS and all that stuff like that lasted 10 minutes. You know, his master plan was foiled in a second. So I don't really think that was done all that well. But the last couple hours was like, all right, here's like, we're going to explain it to you. And we're going to go through Higgs's plan, and we'll talk about that in a second. But, you know, we're going to explain, okay, so Fragile, you know, she made the jump. Because that was confusing, just even watching it. It's like, all right, well, Lou is clearly not there. And so I don't even know how you're led to believe she, like, dies, because she's literally not present. So it's like, all right, so she's literally somewhere. And then Fragile, you know, it shows her die, but then I guess it kind of tries to make you think like she just passes out. You know, when she's crawling and she's got like the ink, and it's like, well, again, there's kind of context clues there because of that stuff that you can kind of tell, you know, what's going on. And again, I like that they explained it all in the ending, that, you know, half of her died, her soul died, but not her body. And she was managing to like hold off on it. Now, another thing, you know, again, I talk about these emotions, right? So I felt vindicated with the Lou thing. I felt very sad with Dead Man. With Fragile, I did think she died because she kept saying things like, I'll always be with you, you know, death can never tear us apart. You know, some of those classic lines that I even think were trophy names, okay, like a lot of the chapters. So whenever she would say that, and I think she said it like, when you find a little bit out about Neil and then she comes to you, it was sometime, or maybe it was when you realize that Lou is dead, right? When Sam realizes Lou's not actually in the pod, which, by the way, I thought they should have done more with that, because I kind of liked that. There was a sense that he really believed. Here, I want to actually go into that just for a second. For a good amount of the game, he thought Lou was actually in that pod, right? But there was a couple times when people would directly tell him that there's nothing in that pod, right? So like Dollman almost said it, and Fragile cut him off. Higgs literally said it. The doctor said it to him. So it's like these, and why am I saying that? Because eventually he kind of has this breakdown where he's saying, no, she's in the pod. Here, I'll show you. And then she's not there, right? And then he kind of has this breakdown. And I love that. I like the idea of him imagining something and then not, you know, it's a trope, it's a cliche, but honestly, I think it was done really well. That part was done well. I think the entire journey of that was not done well, because he was told multiple times that Lou died and Lou was not in that pod, and he almost seemed to agree with it when people would tell him that. He wouldn't have any pushback. He wouldn't say, no, she is in that pod. Clearly, she's right there. He never pushed back. So then when he realizes she's not in the pod, it's like, well, you have been told that by a couple people, including the antagonist of the game. So didn't love that, but I mean, that was a thing. But okay, but again, the point with Fragile, there was a point sometime in there where she said like, death can't tear us apart and it can't separate us, you know, whatever she said. And I think she was talking about Lou, but I also felt in that moment she was talking about herself. So, and she said that a couple times. She told Sam that like 2-3 times, including when he got off the ship, when they were on the beach, like for the final fight, right? When she says like, I'll always be with you. And it's like, okay, she's dead. You know what I mean? Like that is such an ominous final line. Either she's going to die or she already died, right? And so you start to kind of piece it together. So, you know, for her, it was like, I mean, and that's a tough thing, you know, and that's me just kind of being too into it, you know, granted, like if I wasn't so obsessed, you know, kind of learning about this stuff and trying to like have these predictions, which I just do for fun. You could say, like, you know, for videos, not really. Like when I beat Death Stranding 1, I just started thinking, okay, what are they going to do with 2? Yeah, I made videos on them, but I was just passionate, you know, in my own soul. So, you know, and that kind of was a pro and con, because I felt really good with Lou. And then Fragile, it was like, well, I kind of sensed it was coming throughout the game, so I just don't think it hit as hard. I don't think the Fragile thing hit as hard as it could have. It was huge. It is the signature twist of the game. Because the other twist, I would honestly argue, would be the Neil stuff, which is more of a rewrite of the first game's, you know, kind of origin story of Lucy and Sam. it's more of a rewrite than anything else. So it's like, okay, well, that's not a major twist. That's kind of just like inserting a new story there, which I thought was solid. I talked about that in the other videos. Neil's cool, liked it. I love the battles. The battles were freaking awesome. It didn't have the weight of Cliff. It definitely was not nearly as good as Mads Mikkelsen and that journey. But that was such a direct connection to Sam, right? Because literally, like, that BB that like we're seeing all those flashbacks through was Sam, and then Cliff is his dad. So it's like, it's so personal and it's so connective. In this case, I don't even honestly know why you're seeing it, right? Like, you're seeing it once again through Lou, but like, the only reason I guess you're seeing it through Lou is because Lou was inside Lucy and there was that connection there. But Neil wasn't even like the birth father, right? So, that the connection of why he even was able to see that, I don't even actually understand fully. But it was fine. Like, that was not, but it wasn't like the biggest thing in the world, right? I want to mention Higgs too before I end this video. Higgs, so freaking fantastic. The ending, that guitar thing was freaking awesome. Like, even being able to use the guitar, I thought was so cool. And then also the phases. They did it again, right? So, like, in the first game, you kind of have this punching, like, boxing match, which is very, like, Metal Gear and Kojima style. But then, like, to do it now, and it's more of, like, not a hack and slash, but it's basically the same kind of thing, like a brawler type thing. But now you have guitars, and you're whacking each other in the face. And then when it's a side-scroller, I thought that was I guess side to side, right? That was so unbelievably cool. The music, the atmosphere, how they look. And that's where, like, the visuals and music, I think, really, really shine, by the way. So that was absolutely fantastic, and I love what they did there. I have nothing, against that. And then ending it on tomorrow. That's a huge. Well, I want to talk about that because obviously that's more Death Stranding 3 territory, but I do love that. Like, I think that makes total sense. It's a passing of the torch in a thing that I didn't really even expect that to happen, but I'm totally cool with it. She's this mix and match, of Fragile and Sam, so she carries on both their legacies. You can really have anybody, because you can have Sam, you can have Fragile because of the beach, right? So it's like you don't lose her. You'll lose her as a main character, but you don't lose her in general, just like Dead Man, Mama, etc. Even though, again, with Hollywood actors, sometimes it's hard to get them back. Like, and again, like with Sam and Norman Reedus, like, he's getting up there in age, and, you don't know, okay, well, if you're going to do another game that's going to last 5-6 years, and maybe you wait a couple years to do it, Kojima's not even making it, like, okay, it doesn't make sense for Norman Reedus to be a main character. Again, we'll talk about this more in other videos, but I thought it was really well done. And I just think her look is freaking fantastic. And can you imagine a third game with her? Because it's not just shooting and traveling, because you'll have that, but it's also her powers, which would be so freaking sick. So those are my thoughts. Again, I'll do videos more specifically on other things as the days go, but let me know what you think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.